speech is simply Nelson Mandela. Nelson Mandela fought his entire life to get rid of the apartheid government and to get equal rights for black people in South Africa. Not only did he lead ample protests, strikes, and sit-ins, he also served 27 years in prison, more than half of his life in a jail cell. That's how strong he felt about what he believed was right. Not only did he overcome all the struggles in his life, but he became the South African president. He was truly a noble man. South Africa would not be the same if Nelson Mandela never involved himself in politics that changed his country forever. In my speech, I will talk about Nelson Mandela's beginning in politics, through his imprisonment, and then when he led his country as the South African president. To begin, we will look at Nelson Mandela's beginning in the political world. Nelson Mandela became increasingly involved in politics in 1942, and then he joined the African National Congress, also known as the ANC, in 1944. He was the founder of the ANC's Youth League, which was for 14 years old and older youth that believed in the same beliefs as the ANC. He rose through the ranks in the ANC and eventually became the leader. The ANC adopted a more radical mass-based policy, which at first he did not believe in. He didn't want to use violence to get what he wanted, but eventually they thought that was the only way they were going to get their point across. Mandela was involved in a countrywide police sweep and was arrested on December 5th, 1955. The apartheid government charged 156 people of the Congress Alliance for treason for, and I quote, conspiracy to use violence to overthrow the present government and replace it with a communist state, MSU, unquote. The trial lasted more than 4 years. 2 months into the trial, the initial indictment was dropped, but immediately a new indictment was released, and it was for the arrest of 30 ANC members. On March 29, 1961, the judge acquitted the 30 African National Congress members, including Mandela, for lack of evidence. Unfortunately, this was not Mandela's last run-in with the law. Mandela spent 27 years in prison. He put together a 3-day national worker strike in 1961 and was arrested for it a year later. He was originally sentenced to 5 years in prison in 1962. But then in 1963 he was brought back to trial and he was given a life sentence for political offenses, including sabotage. He served his first 18 years at a prison called Robben Island. Then he moved to a new prison called Pollsmoor Prison, and then he finished his sentence at a prison called Victor Verster Prison. His life in prison was that he received the lowest treatment because being a black political offender, you're not going to get very good treatment. He also contracted tuberculosis, which was life-threatening. On the plus side of his imprisonment, he did receive his bachelor's for law from the University of London's correspondence program. He was released from prison on February 11, 1990, 27 years later. Finally, Mandela became the president of South Africa. Mandela was the South African president from May 10, 1994 through June 14, 1999. In 1995, Mandela established the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, also known as the TRC, which investigated human rights violations under the apartheid government, which is who he spent his 27 years in prison for. He introduced housing, education, and economic development to increase the living standards of the country's black population. Mandela did not seek a second term as president, even though the whole country wanted him to. He retired from active politics in 1999. He maintained a strong presence as an advocate of peace, reconciliation, and social justice. Mandela was the founding member of a group called the Elders, which is a group of international leaders established in 2007 for the promotion of conflict resolution and problem solving throughout the world. Mandela unfortunately died on December 5th, 2013 at the whopping age of 95 years old. In a nutshell, Nelson Mandela was one in a million. Nelson Mandela started his time in politics in 1942. He went through everything you could imagine to fight for his beliefs. He wanted to live in a country that was equal, and he would do anything to get that. Mandela suffered through 27 years in prison, only to prosper to become the South African president. A known and respected figure throughout the world, Mandela carried himself humbly, respectfully, and never forgetting all he went through. One of Nelson Mandela's famous quotes is, and I quote, "Do not judge me by my successes. Judge me by how many times I fell down and got back up." Mandela, unquote. I don't think that could get any more relevant to his life. He was and still is one of the most respected figures in the world. Thank you.